Hello everybody, hope you are safe and fine. Last 2 months we are sharing CV insights. This month, based on various feedbacks, we have included two-wheelers, cars, tractors, and CV sub 5 ton, along with new product launches. Post-COVID, already many sectors have shown improvements like two-wheeler, cars, and tractors. Even CV has shown improvement on month basis, but on year basis, they are still degrowing. Wholesale is also increasing because of festival demand expectations and due to pre-buying effect of price increase. Like this, there are multiple factors which impacts the sales. And to understand all these things, we have invited our expert, Mr. Shyam Miller, who will be sharing in detail all these things. I want to thank him for taking out his time and sharing his valuable insights. So let us hear from Mr. Shyam Miller. Thank you and wishing you happy festival season.
In this section, let's take stock of the CV industry sales in September and in H1. Happy to share my reflections. Q1 was a washout, both for manufacturing and sales. Actually, both started sometime only in the second week or the third week of May. Volume started trickling from the last week of May. Thereafter, we saw the pent-up demand, the filling in of dealerships with BS6 vehicles, because of the fact that the dealerships were devoid of the stocks since the BS4 phase out. And of course, we saw some sectors like e-commerce, fruits and vegetables, construction, soft mining, all contributing to the meager numbers that started moving up from the month of the end of May. Now, when we look at the sales thereafter, the sequential month-on-month double-digit growth started actually from the month of July. And if you were to look at the month of September over the month of August, the growth has been a reasonably good 31%, which only means that the CV industry is coming back to life. If you look a little deeper, the SCV segment continues to do much better than the other segments. The laggards in the CV industry, of course, are buses, followed by medium and heavy commercial vehicles. So let's look at some data points. 73% of the H1 sales are small commercial vehicles, which means 112,000 units out of the total 152,000 commercial vehicles were small commercial vehicles. Only 40,000 units of LCV, MNHCV and buses were sold in H1. This compares extremely poorly to the 158,000 units that were sold in a year ago period. The models which predominate sales in the MNHCV segment are multi-axle vehicle tippers and the 4x2 haulage trucks. And in the case of the LCVs, it is the 5-ton segment, the 9-ton segment, followed by the INLCV. These have pretty much remained the same over the last 6 months. The most challenged segment continues to be buses. There has been absolute total demand destruction that has happened. From the beginning of this fiscal, we've hardly seen any school bus sales for obvious reasons. School bus buying has not been there. Social distancing has led to people shifting towards personal mobility. Intercity travel, which has literally not been there, has seen a complete absence of sales. And of course, we saw that in BS4 there was considerable amount of pre-buy which happened of particularly the intercity long distance buses, the cowls on which bodies have been built. And last but not the least is that in the 6 months we've not seen any significant, or literally there's been no STU buying. Now, in the case of medium and heavy commercial vehicles, I think the reasons why the demand has been low in these 6 months goes back, I would say. The demand destruction actually has started happening ever since the axle load revision norms got implemented, and thereafter the MNHCV sales have been on a decline. Some of the other points which are to be kept in mind for this low sales of MNHCV in the current fiscal or in the first half of this year is that we still see that because of the poor state of the economy, almost 45% of the trucks are still idle. The BS6 trucks are 20 to 25% higher than the cost of the BS4 trucks. This means that the customer needs to bring in a much higher margin money to the table than what he used to do when he was buying a BS4 truck. Added to this, funding has become extremely stringent. Financiers are becoming very, very tight on the credit screens. Their loan to value has reduced from almost 95 to 100% to levels of almost 75 to 85%, which once again puts pressure on the customers to bring in margin money. We've also seen other key areas, and of course, the most important consumable for a truck is basically diesel. The diesel prices have gone up by 13% between the beginning of April to the end of September. Of course, in the month of end of July, we saw that the prices spiked up to record levels, but luckily that has since come down. Last but not the least, I think much has been talked about the scrappage policy, but little has been seen on the ground in terms of what the government is doing in terms of making this policy happen. And therefore, I do believe that this is going to be a mirage, and I don't think we should take this as a very serious step for adding to the CV volumes in the current fiscal year. Thank you. The first half of the fiscal FY21, namely the period of April to September, is behind us. It's slightly more than 6 months since the national lockdown happened on the 23rd of March. We have seen intense pain, particularly in the first quarter, when the GDP tanked by almost 24%. But most importantly, I think thousands and thousands of lives have been lost to the coronavirus. A lot of jobs, nearly 2.1 crore white collar jobs have been lost between April to August. This is a report of the CMI publication. We have seen several hundreds of establishments shut, and it is likely that many of them will not reopen. We hope that such a catastrophe never recurs, the one which has taken such a huge toll on lives and livelihood. So rebuilding the economy has been a very, very onerous task. And I think both the government and the private sector have been at it over the last many months. The unlock that has been happening in phases has shown some respite in some sector, though we believe that all the sectors are not yet out of the woods. The new normal, as we see it, is a completely new world. We need to adapt and thrive because this is going to be the new normal for us. We have seen absolutely extraordinary changes in the way that we buy goods, food, groceries. Basically, it is e-commerce which has come to the forefront in terms of driving our purchase behavior. Travel, while air travel and other modes of public travel have not been allowed, we have seen that there's an increased preference for personal mobility. Education, as we have seen, both the schools and the colleges, they have all taken to digital learning tools. The entertainment industry, with the shutting down of cinemas, has been the benefit that has been reaped by the OTT platforms and the digital channels. And last but not the least is that I think the corporate world has got used to the working from home or the work from home culture. I think these have been some very, very significant changes that have happened over the last 6 months in particular. So let's talk about some of the positives that have happened during this period. The first most important is that I think we have been blessed with bountiful monsoons, and I think this is going to have a very salutary effect in terms of the rural economy. We've already seen excellent indicators in terms of how the rural economy has contributed to increased sales of the two-wheelers, the entry-level cars. Of course, tractors, seeds, and fertilizers have been absolutely important inputs for this particular economy. We've also seen along the way over the last 6 months, the GST collections have improved. I think in the month of August, the figures which got reported in September, we had over 95,000 crores of GST collections. We are seeing that the power consumption is back to pre-COVID levels, which means that the industries are slowly coming back to normalcy. We've also seen that the e-way bills that are being filed are also on the way up. All these are positives which are good news for the economy. What are the concerns? The concerns still remain in terms of the core sector, the 8 sectors which are there: steel, cement, fertilizer, and some of them. It has contracted for the 6th month running. I think this is an area of concern. The only sectors which have held up is basically fertilizer and power. End of August, we saw the end of the moratorium period that was given to the customers. Now we are very apprehensive of what is the likely impact that we will see because of rising NPAs, and this would probably come up in the books of the financial sector sometime in Q3. Inflation, again primarily driven by food and fuel, is also above the 6.7% mark, which is above the 6% target that the RBI has set for itself. A critical area which I think is important for the success of the economy is the MSME sector. So we have seen that the financial health of the MSMEs, and also obviously these play a huge role in the auto sector as well, have not been really very good. So this is one other sector that we need to look at. So in the next session or in the next section, we will look at what is the way forward for the macroeconomy. Thank you. In this section on the road ahead or the way forward, let's start by looking at the macroeconomy. The GDP contraction for the fiscal year FY21 is expected to be anywhere between 9 to 12%. The auto sector projection of degrowth is expected to be around 30%. The fiscal deficit against a 3.5% budgeted is expected to swell up to almost 7.6 to 8%. Control on COVID, which is now spreading into semi-urban and rural areas, besides several cities which are getting into the second wave and the third wave, is crucial for the economy to come back on rails. The last most important thing is a potential good news for the economy in the sense that the government is likely to announce a stimulus in the form of fiscal measures sometime in October and November. So let's wait and see what it's likely to be. Now, looking at the medium-term implications and looking at how the economy is expected to perform, Q3 and Q4 are definitely going to be better than Q1 and Q2 in progress, in succession, so to speak. However, the full revival of the economy is expected to happen only from April 2022. It is becoming very clear now that the cutting edge that companies will have is only when they embrace digitalization and Industry 4.0 going forward. Now let's come to the specifics as far as the CV industry. Now, the revival of the CV industry hinges on several items which need to be actioned upon by the Government of India, starting with the 1.75 lakh crores that were budgeted in the budget 2020, which was meant for infrastructure, road building, and some of the projects being the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, almost 9,000 kilometers of economic development corridor roads, nearly 2,000 kilometers of coastal corridor roads. So these are going to be extremely crucial. Second is the Economic Survey of 2019 had revealed that every year there is a shortfall of about almost $90 billion that the government needs to spend on infrastructure. I think this also is something very crucial for the CV industry to come back to its normal mode. The other important area is basically how the post-moratorium situation is going to pan out and how the financiers are going to maintain their stance going forward. because of the likely NPA that may come up post the moratorium numbers come out, and we would get to see that probably in the balance sheets of these NBFCs and finance companies in Q3. Now let's look at some of the challenges and the opportunities that are there in front of the automotive sector. SIAM has made a representation to the Government of India to defer the CAFE and the RDE norms because it involves considerable capital investment, which the sector can ill afford at this point in time. And the other area which is of concern here and now is that should the demand increase, we only hope that the government relaxes the norms of social distancing by allowing the workforce on the production lines to be more than 50%, which is the current restriction right now. This will obviously improve the productivity and the overhead cost of these OEMs. In BS6, we particularly see that many companies have a large dependence on China, particularly for the electronic items. So these companies would need to work upon alternative sources to move on to. Used trucks in this economic situation is going to be a very good business. So I think the necessary stakeholders will need to take note. I've been saying this since the last couple of months that demand generation is going to be the number one priority both for OEMs as well as for the dealerships. In this situation of where the economy has not yet come back into the full mode, it is important for dealers to look at getting into their focus on the aftermarket business, which is basically driving their service absorption ratios to greater than 1. Lastly, I think with the steps announced by the government on the PLI, which is the production linked incentive, and the going vocal for local programs, I think the vendors and suppliers would need to harness this opportunity so that they're able to come out of this pandemic-led recession. Thank you so much.